Hi, welcome to Known Through Connection. I'm your host, Jess. Known Through Connection is a podcast where we value presence over performance. Not that performance isn't important, but presence is where you build connection. And today, we're building a connection with Erin Clark, our guest, who is based out of California. Welcome, Erin. We're so glad to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my very first podcast, and I couldn't be happier to be with you. Thanks for the
We're so honored that you would choose us to be your first podcast. So thank you. Thank you for choosing me to be your first session. Really appreciate it. And for those who are on video, you're noticing probably a little bit of similarity in styles here. So Erin, how's the weather?
How's the weather? Thanks for asking. Well, let's just explain what to the listening audience and the viewers what how's the weather is. 4 years ago, my husband passed away unexpectedly. We were married for 30 years when he passed away.
Wow. Years.
Yes. And what I learned very quickly is everybody says, "How are you?" Of course, "How are you?" is just a sweet gesture that has been around forever. Well, in my grief, I was too overwhelmed to answer that question. I didn't even know how. And I would journal my husband for every year. So this year's, we just had 4 years. So I would journal my grief. And as I was journaling, I kept thinking about that. How are you? And I would have my family and friends ask me, "How's the weather?" And then I could tell them, "How's the weather?" meant to me that it was rainy. Maybe I cried that day and the rain was pouring down. Maybe it was stormy. I could just say, "Hey, it was stormy, guys." And I kind of went through all of the different weather that we have. Even during grief, sunny days can come, and you can't believe that they can come, but they just do. So the language of "How are you?" changed into "How's the weather?"
Yeah.
And my husband has just been gone for 4 years. October 2nd, 2021 was he passed away. Every year, like I said, I journaled, but we were big letter writers. He kept every love letter we ever had. And so what I did is I would write him a letter every year. I think I kind of mentioned that earlier about how my grief was going. So this year's letter, the thought came to me on September 18th. I had a conversation with a friend of mine. She was telling me about a friend of hers that lost her husband.
Hmm.
Name is Shauna, and Shauna was having a conversation at work, and that lady said, "I'm really sad. It's been a year. I've lost my husband. People are asking me how I am."
Mm-hmm.
Shauna, my friend, said, "Oh, Erin says to just switch it and say, 'How's the weather?'" And that lady was so touched that she said, "Can I change this and talk to my friends that way?" So that was September 18th. My husband's anniversary is 10/2. I've never owned a business, operated a business, and I just said, "Okay, let's go." So How's the Weather came out of grief, but and still is. It was born from a devastating loss in my world, in my children's world. And I was able to launch it on my husband's anniversary, 10/2/24 of 25 of this year.
Cool.
And thank you for letting me share this story.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about the passing of your husband. I'm really sorry. And I know we talked about that previously, but I still want to say that I'm sorry about the passing of your husband. And I know, we're recording this episode right before Thanksgiving, and I know um, the holidays must be tough. And so I'm really sorry for that. Um, I know you shared a bit on your socials here recently, being transparent about how that's impacting you. And so I feel like this is timely, actually, because I think there are other people who are likely dealing with grief or loss. And I know from myself this year, I dealt with nobody, make sure this is true when I say it, nobody passing, but I lost at least one job, kind of another one, in several relationships. And, I've really had to go through kind of figuring out my identity, and there was I can resonate. It resonates with me that how are you doing can feel like a lot. Like, oh my gosh, how much of my heart do I put out here right now? Can I answer this in a way that just won't be depleting in this moment? And so I love what how's the weather does is it takes what could be a question that can actually feel burdensome, even though it's supposed to be helpful,
Yeah.
and make it be more helpful by, you don't have to rip your heart open to say how's the weather doing. You can just say, well, stormy and cloudy today, or you can answer it however you want to answer it, and it makes it very approachable. I don't have to put a ton of energy in, yet I can tell you very quickly how I'm doing. So I love it. I think it's great.
Well, thank you for that. And to your point about you might not have had somebody physically die, but grief can come through losing your job. Grief
Hmm.
is unfortunately an umbrella that lists a lot of little things underneath it, and they're not little when we're going through it. So everybody is unfortunately going to have grief in their life. And that doesn't mean that they're going to lose. Maybe they don't have the, oh, I didn't have a year of losing somebody, but you just said I lost my job and maybe I lost a relationship. Those all break our hearts. Those all leave us feeling lost. And those all, put us under pressure of like, how are we doing? Because no matter what we're going through, people say, how are you? And it is a wonderful thing. I mean, it didn't just come into our lives. It's been around a long time. So
Right.
with how's the weather, even though that has also been around, that question, how's the weather? The golfers say it. Everybody says it. How's the weather where you are?
Hmm.
Um, this movement, if you will,
Hmm.
is to change our language, to make it softer, to talk about what's really going on in our lives. And so if we can start talking in how's the weather, like you said, hey, it's stormy. And maybe you don't have any time to say anything else, but your friend knows what you're talking about because you've
Yep.
also talking in the language of how's the weather. And two can be true. In grief, no matter what your grief is, you can be rainy and stormy, and just like the weather, there's gonna be some sunshine. So, it's hard to navigate, and it's hard to believe that that even is gonna be possible when you are so down and overwhelmed with your grief, but you do learn that just like weather, your life and your grief will change. It will always be with you.
Mm.
You you're speaking about losing a job. That memory or that pain of losing that job and having that grief in your life, you'll always remember it. You're just going to look back on it and say, man, those chapters of my life or those pages were super stormy. And
Yes.
now coming.
Yeah, I was trying to think if Aaron, I expected you to ask me how's your weather, and I was gonna how am I gonna answer this? I'm gonna say it's foggy, but yet there are rays of sunlight coming out, right? And so exactly what you were gonna say is it's not it doesn't the weather, just like real life, can you can have it can be raining and there not be a cloud in the sky. I have encountered that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting how if you draw that metaphor of the weather to how you're doing mentally and emotionally, there's a wide range of ways that you can answer that.
Yeah, I agree. And I would ask you how is the weather, but that maybe that's for another podcast. I don't know.
No, I have gotten a little bit of gamut today. Definitely foggy, a little bit rainy, touch stormy, but then the sun was also out. And right now, um, it's like sunny with a haze. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
Very very relatable. And, I was talking about this the other day towards the how's the weather and how are you, the comparison. Because if we've walked down the hall, wherever we have worked in life, you walk down
Yep.
the hall, walk down the streets, whatever your life brings to you, everybody says, "How are you?" And then you go to answer
Yeah,
and they're
good.
now now does that mean we have any more time to answer how's the weather? Maybe. Maybe we start to hear it in a different way and we're like, "Did that person ask me how the weather was?" And
Right.
and then, "What?" And then maybe you can shout like, "Hey, it's raining." And then maybe brighten somebody's day because they
No,
don't
I
know.
mean,
Yeah, right. But I think just like any new language that we have to learn or that we choose to learn, it doesn't flow off the tongue initially, but the
yeah,
more conversation you have about it, the more comfortable you are, the more you hear it, the better you answer it. I have a huge family. I'm the youngest girl of 11 brothers and sisters, which means I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and then they have babies. We have generations, which is a blessing. So those babies of my nieces and nephews who are anywhere between 7 and in their teens, and they say, "Aunt Erin, I had a stormy day yesterday." Maybe they lost a soccer game. Maybe not getting good grades. Maybe something's going on in school. I don't know if it was you and I that we were talking about this, but I also worked at in an elementary school for many years. And I'm a mom. My kids are in they're adults, but maybe many people can relate to this
hmm
and it's going to all tie into how's the weather.
hmm
If you are a parent and you pick up your kids from school and you say, "Hey, how are you? How was your day?" "It was fine." "Would you do?" "Nothing." So the teachers don't want to hear the kids did nothing because they're working really hard. How how's the weather ties in is you can start having this conversation about how the weather is and even start from you as a parent to say like, "Oh, you did nothing today," or "You're fine with," or "Your day was fine. My day was stormy, and maybe the bills weren't paid," or whatever your language is. I think the more we talk about it in all areas, all ages. I have another friend of mine that I got to send her some sweatshirts, and she has an 8-year-old, and she just was so cute. You know what she said? "Pick your own weather. Pick your own weather." And I was like, 8 years old. So
one,
the point of all these little stories is to say language, if it's not something we use every day, it just takes a minute.
yeah,
But it, I do believe that how's the weather is already in the community. It's in my community. I'm brand new at this. In fact, we're only 7 weeks old. My husband's anniversary was 7 weeks ago. And I have had the most amazing conversations from people that I don't have never even met before just through social media.
mm,
And their how's the weather? They've said it was a softer way to talk, a
yeah,
more comfortable way to come into um, a conversation with people that are asking.
yes, very much so. And the example with the picking up the kids after school, I know we definitely talked about that because I talked about how, like in this season of life, I get to pick up my youngest, and I go exactly through what you just talked about. Um, how's school? Fine,
Yeah.
okay. So I tried to, one of the things I've used at work over the years has been, okay, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being really bad, 10 being great. And that's still too much. That's still too much. And so I'm trying to figure out now, can I incorporate how's the weather with my daughter when I pick her up? Um, she, I have to get her to want to talk. Right now, doesn't want to talk when I pick her up. Not
Yeah.
because of me. She's just over, she's been in a high performing mode all day. But I feel like if we could get in like a how's the weather, she could be like sunny or rainy or stormy, or you can say a lot with one word. And um so anyways, it's just something I'm like, that'd be cool if we could incorporate that language with my daughter. That'd be helpful.
Yes. In fact, to that point of back to kids in school, and you can have that language with her. Sometimes as parents, when we pick up our kids and they've been at their job all day, which is school, and we've been at our job all day, which is our work, or if
Yep.
we're stay moms or dads, we're at home working. And I think we get so regimented into our schedule that maybe sometimes we don't even wanna know how they are, but we ask them because we love them. And
uh,
maybe they don't know how to respond because they're overwhelmed with whatever happened in their day.
Yep.
So bringing "How's the weather" to them might sound like it's gonna be difficult, but it's a little cheeky, if you will, you
Hmm.
know? It's very cheeky. To me, it doesn't feel like it's cheeky, but it can apply to all populations, right? I mentioned earlier that I worked at an elementary school. This is in my brain, it's like a no-brainer. Like, go talk to those kids. This is an opening to the new kid at school, or a kid that hasn't found I like basketball, or do I like, it's an easy conversation. And how I would suggest you just start talking with her is because she's older, like you said,
Yep.
15, high school. Tell her the story of this. Tell
Yeah.
her the story. And then people, kids start to connect it in their own way. And the more we talk about language, the more comfortable we're going to be. Right now, she's like, "What? Have you lost your marbles? What is how's the?"
Yes. What? Look out the window. What do you?
But I did mention we have these sweatshirts on, and she's going to love it. And then that's
Yes.
how, conversations, starters of conversations can be really difficult for all of us.
Yeah.
Back to grief, right? And let's just compare it to a teenager, if you will. This is my grief. They have their own grief.
Yes.
Has
Daily.
come, it could be the hardest time in their life. Maybe they're dating. This is all ages, right? And so, again, I think "How's the weather" is just a new language.
Hmm.
And languages feel uncomfortable, but this leaves openness and tenderness. I've gotten a lot of people say, like, "Thank you for saying this, because I do know how to answer that."
Mm. Yeah, I love it. And you said it's kind of cheeky. For those who are on the Apple Podcasts, you're not going to see it, but for Spotify and YouTube, currently you see video. To me, it's kind of a fun design. There's a sun. I think it's a sunset. Is that a sunset? Yeah, and then a
Correct.
cloud in front of it, and then "How's the weather" in kind of fun, like uh 70s groovy font. I think that's my take on it, anyways.
Yes, absolutely.
And I love it because, and one of the things that drew it to me quickly when I got connected with you was I fully appreciate that it was born in grief, and yet it's also playful. Like, there's energy and playfulness to it. Just like I see in you when I engage with you. I know the grief is real. I know missing your husband is real. I know life is real, and yet there's still a playfulness and a life to you. And so I see that in the logo. That's really fun. I think I like it. I like, and we talked about it before we got on the call. Like, to be able to hold both at the same time, to be able to hold life is hard, and we can also have fun and find those rays of sunshine even in the midst of that.
Right. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. One of the things that you hear, my experience, one of the things that you hear when you well, when I lost my husband, I'm just gonna speak for me, that,
Hmm.
uh, you hear a lot like, "Erin, you're so strong, you're doing a great job, you're showing up, you're doing all the things." And sometimes you just think, "Okay, you have to plow through it." I think maybe can everybody can relate to this. Again, whether you're 15 and going to school and you seem like you're strong
Hmm.
and you seem like you're showing up, but your heart is broken and you're your mind is not all the way there. And so you go through stages, right? All the stages. I'm
Mhm.
very, very grateful that in my personal walk with this grief and losing my husband that I have not one time been angry, so I'm very grateful for that. So maybe that's where the playfulness comes in. I am very I I I really thank God every day that I didn't have one time that I was angry.
Wow. Wow.
Um, and what I think that maybe the bubbliness is, well, that's a little bit of my personality, but I really truly want to honor Greg and all this. And he was a great guy with a big personality, but yet very big personality, but yet very to himself. And
Mm.
so I hope that all makes sense and that
Mhm.
I appreciate that that you love the design and love the playfulness and that I am, I got some energy to me.
Yeah.
But I also, I've often said that I have two speeds and one is just go and stop. And
Okay.
and and to that point of having two speeds, it serviced me for a long time, the first couple years, because uh, you just want to run away from the grief. At
Mm.
least I don't know if I could have honored Greg in this way 2 years ago. I do believe that everybody has, their time that I think we always wanna honor our spouses that we lose, our children that we lose, all the people that we lose, could be your mom and dad.
Mhm.
And sometimes you just don't have the energy, you can't find the playfulness, there is no sun.
Mhm.
There's just despair
Mhm.
and cloudy days. But with that, 2 things can be true. You can have grief, you can have cloudy days,
Mhm.
and in my experience, you're gonna make me emotional, this doesn't public. Um, 2 things can be true,
Mhm.
which, shows on How's the Weather that, the sun is behind you because the cloud is really heavy.
Mm. Okay.
Heavy, heavy. So I don't know if I could have done this even years ago. I'm I guess why I'm that is everybody has their different time when we go through grief, and sometimes it's cloudy for a long time, but that's why we started How's the Weather? Well,
Yep.
so you can't rush weather. It's gonna rain until it's not gonna rain anymore, and that is exactly how grief is. You're
Mhm.
gonna cry. You're gonna cry until you can't cry anymore. And
Mhm.
somebody's gonna say, "Is the weather sunny today?" And you're gonna go, "Ah, I think it is. Might be cloudy still, because
Mhm.
everything's not black and white, just like weather."
Mhm. I think that's really good, and I think it's important that you, um, find those friends who are compassionate towards understanding that, um going through grief is okay and that's healthy. And usually those are friends who've gone through a lot of grief themselves. I think about the people who've been able to walk close to me. They've gone through it themselves, right? And so they understand. And I had a friend who earlier in the year said the only way through it, the only way to get past it is to go through it,
Yeah.
meaning you can't skip the process. And she was right. And I think it's important that you recognize that you need people who are going to be patient with you, who understand it's a process, who understand grief is real and at times it's healthy, and yet who also can cast little rays of sunshine into the stormy clouds to give you reminders that there's hope and there's a future beyond what feels like maybe a nighttime that isn't going to end. Um, And so it's a mix of both, and those people who are able to walk with you and give you that space, but also give you little rays of sunshine are so valuable.
I agree. I agree. And so, how's the weather? You can just say stormy, and then your friend will already know what that means because you had a conversation. Like, this is what I'm learning to put my grief in. And then that friend, that's all he or she needs to know.
Yep,
You're okay. A lot of people in depression unfortunately take their lives, and
yep,
this hopefully, it's my hope that if we know people that are in those situations, that depression is so hard that they can't find a word for it, and you're checking in, it's my hope that just one word will let you know, okay, it's rainy, it's stormy, and maybe you just go and sit with them.
yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, understand, like, yes, it's stormy outside, or, the thunder's been coming for a long time and it doesn't feel good. S And just maybe just a softer, gentle way of like, "Are you okay?" "No, I no." And, maybe that can start taking place, when we get our texts from our friends that tell us, that they are there for us.
Aaron, I want to pivot just a little bit. Tell us just a little bit about Greg. Tell us about your husband. What was he like? What did he do? What kind of man
So
was he?
he was a godly man, he believed in God, he loved his family, we have 2 children. I met Greg when I was 20, and I'm going to be 60 in 2026. And when I met Greg, he was in the Air Force, he was a firefighter
Wow.
um in the Air Force, and then when he came out, he tested a few times. We grew up in California, and in the city that we grew up in, he started applying to be a fireman, and he ended up pivoting, speaking of pivoting, into uh, his brother was a sheriff, and so he decided to go into the sheriff's department, and he worked for LA County Sheriff for 15 years. And then he retired and he went into criminal justice, and he had all kinds of different jobs in that field afterwards. And he loved Madison and Chandler dearly. Those are our children. And he loved, loved, loved working out. That was his passion.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And he loved going to school. So right before Greg passed away, he finished with his doctorate in
Wow. Family counseling, is that what we said?
family counseling. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. So Greg was, and still is, because I think that it's really important to talk about people that you've lost, talk
yes.
about now, because, you know, though they don't have to be memories, they can still be this is who he was, and this is who he is. Um, so thank you for asking. He was a wonderful guy, big
Well, Greg,
heart.
yeah, he sounds so interesting in that he was a honorable man given the service that he chose to give, and also a man of action, right? Firefighter, sheriff, yet also a man of depth who got a doctorate in family counseling. Like, that's not shallow, but just like the depth of who he was between service, action, yet connection and relationship and restoration is what I'm picking up. So that's a very interesting man. Greg was a very interesting man, I'm sure.
Thank you. Just a little bit more. One of my favorite things that Greg said when his dad passed away, he spoke at the service, and he said, "I wish he was still here because I'm a work in progress and I'm not over yet." So that kind of sums up my husband, Greg Clark, in a nutshell. He was a forever learner. He never stopped. He read the Bible from the beginning to the end. He, yeah, he was a great guy with a huge heart.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing more about who Greg is with me and with the Known Through Connection community. That's really cool. Sounds like a cool guy.
Thank you. And he
Yep.
put up, so there you go.
That's so
There's
funny.
that.
I don't see that way at all. Um, Erin, I think it's so interesting, and actually, you and I have never talked about this. In hindsight, uh, even though we've like just picked up over a couple conversations so naturally, and I think that's just who you are. But um, you're an interesting combination of some of what's been known through connection to this point, where um, you bring the grief and the resilience component, and also, and this is just because this is where I'm at, the entrepreneurial component to that too, like grief and resilience and starting a business, entrepreneurship. It's such an interesting combination.
Well, thank you for that. I'm not good at either. Let's just be transparent.
Just starting. You're just
Li-
starting.
Hi, listening audience, raise your hand if you're not good at any of it. I don't. I believe in God, and I truly believe this was led by Him. I mentioned earlier that this um, could not have been done
Mm,
2 years ago, a year ago. I
mm,
always talked about it. It was my language, but certainly to your point of being a business owner, what? I no, I sometimes things happen in our lives and well, I'm just thinking about this right now. Sometimes things happen in our life, including people passing away that you love with all your heart, and you can't explain it and you don't know why.
mhm,
Um, it's the same thing I feel about starting this business.
mm,
What?
mm,
Who am I? What am I doing? Like who? What is happening?
mhm,
But I can explain it. I know the why. I know the community that I want to talk to. Um, but the other part, the business part, I thank you God because I don't. I it was it just came. I'm speechless, and that my dad, who is not here with us anymore, would be like, "Come on, Aaron, you got the words." I am speechless. So thank you for saying that. That I wouldn't even call myself an entrepreneur yet. I'd have to look it up. What's that? I don't know about that, but I appreciate it. I'm willing to become one if that's how I get the how's the weather message out for sure.
well, I realized the one thing that we didn't really talk about before this call was sometimes I've gotten feedback that the fun thing is for people to know how I'm connected to the guest, right? And
Mm.
for me, it felt natural to connect with you when I just kind of saw your social media and who I thought you were, which ended up being who you were. Um, but I guess you really initiated. So like, how did we connect, Erin? How did Known Through Connection get on your radar? You have to tell the story. I don't know the story.
Well, let me just say that how I got how's the weather out there is, I guess they call them, I'm having air quotes if you're listening to this. I guess they call it a soft launch.
Okay.
Okay. So that means put it on your social media.
Yeah.
So with that, I have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I don't have because I'm just a normal gal with a few, friends that are on those socials. I just started looking for people that were going to be part of this community.
Mm.
And maybe I was putting in grief and this, and then I was trying to expand it a little bit more and just came across your episodes and the way you spoke to people and what you were trying to do. And I just connected and I thought, you remind me of one of my brothers. I think that's why it's to talk. And you're right, listening audience or viewing audience, however you hear this, we've just met. We talked a week ago,
Yeah.
but I feel
Don't feel like it.
it doesn't feel that way. It feels
No.
like I knew for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I would say just kind of accidental, right? Or part of this process. But sometimes accidents can be the best things, right? If you're
Huh.
okay, not hurt, and you're like, okay, we've survived this. Accidentally, I found your page and found your podcast
Huh.
and there. Yeah, took a chance.
That's awesome. I'm glad you took a chance. I'm very glad to know you. Um, Yeah, it's so fun. It's so fun what just I mean, you're putting yourself out there with how's the weather? I put myself out there with known through connection in a similar fashion. And here we are. It's so funny how God works and the connections that get made. And you can just tell when somebody's genuine. And I see that and I hear that in you. And I think that's why it's been so easy to just quickly build rapport with you is you're just a genuine person.
Thank you so much. I feel the same way about you.
Mm,
And
thank-
there's that saying that people come in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So hopefully this is a lifetime and we can
Yeah,
spread both of our messages, right? And just get into community, start a new language, start one with your daughter, and then she starts one with her friends. And what is that thing? Is it a song or a poem? Like, and so on, right?
right.
So, I think that I mentioned that I come from such a big family, and my mom and dad always, instilled in us to, we may not always like each other, but we love each other, and and it's true. And like with people always say what's going on with the world today that it just we need more kind people, and I'm just going to be honest. I don't know if I'm that kind person all the time, but I do think that it's important to find a new way to communicate if we can,
Hmm.
e- even through it all. And, through it all, that means different things to different people. We're all going through something. And yes, I appreciate that you see spunky in me and a strong attitude and, comfortability. I for sure am somebody that is very comfortable with themselves.
Sure.
But what I've experienced the last couple years can isolate even somebody like me who
Mm,
is bubbly and, comfortable to talk to or talk with. Um, Grief can be isolating. And
yeah.
so I thank you again for having me today to talk about this different language, to talk about grief, to talk about the sun, the thunderstorms, all the storms that this is not just for grieving. This is for living people to change our language and start talking a little bit more
Mm,
gen- gentler to each other. And I
mm.
mean, people that know me would be like, "Really, Erin, you could take that lesson." I'm also learning too.
We all have our moments for sure. We
She
all
is not. Yes, but hopefully this is perfect.
Erin, I want to let people know how can they connect with you? How can people best connect with you? How do people look you up? I know you're on several different social media platforms that you mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and put out what your website is. So the website is www.hows HOWS dash the dash weather.com. So hows dash the dash weather.com. And then you'll see very quickly a lot of your apparel. You'll see your story. Um, how else can people best connect with you?
You for asking. You can connect with us on Instagram and TikTok. And I have a YouTube page now.
Yes, you're pretty active on Instagram, and I have not. I have kind of a mixed relationship with TikTok personally, and that's just my own thing. I've got to figure out how to get the algorithm to figure out more who I want to be.
Yeah,
But YouTube, I know you just started as well. Um, what should what should people look for? Because you have wear it in the handle of your social media, correct? Wear it. How's the weather? Wear it.
Yes.
Okay,
I
awesome.
And on our website, you can hear more of our story. And then we carry just two things. We carry hats that are Texas orange, and they say, "How's the weather?" Same logo. And then we carry the sweatshirt you have on and I have on.
Awesome. Okay,
And thank you so much again for having me. And I just, my hope is that we get lots of communities talking about how's the weather.
awesome. Well, thank you, Erin. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing about Greg, your husband. Sounds like a great guy, very honorable man. And so, thank you for sharing about him. Thank you for expanding our vocabulary of how we interact with each other and ways to reduce the burden on people that we want to know how they're doing. We want to know how they are. We care, but we don't want to make it feel burdensome to ask them. And so, thank you for giving us new words to use. And thank you for the fun logo that gives that and imagery that goes with it. It's really fun to make the brand just come to life. So thank you for letting Known Through Connection be your first podcast. We're very honored. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Thank you, Erin.